Do you know what really happened to a Toronto taxi driver in 2011? He vanished mid-shift. His cab left running, but he was gone. No clues, no answers. Stay tuned as we uncover the mystery. And don't forget to subscribe for more unsolved stories. Toronto, 2011. The city pulsed with life. Office workers spilling out of high-rises. College students weaving through late-night diners. And cabs darting across intersections under glowing streetlights. Among those cabs was one driven by Imran Saleh, a 42-year-old father of two, who had been behind the wheel for over a decade to his passengers. He was polite, dependable, and unshakably calm. To his fellow drivers, he was a man who knew the streets of Toronto better than anyone. Every shortcut, every hidden alley, every diner that stayed open past midnight. His routine was simple: clock in at 6 p.m., drive until the city quieted down, and return home just before dawn. Nothing about September 17th, 2011, suggested that night would be any different. Imran kissed his kids goodbye, told his wife he'd be back by morning, and drove off. It was just another night on the job. Until it wasn't. Imran's shift moved along uneventfully until just past 11:30 p.m. according to dispatch logs. His last recorded passenger was picked up near Dundas Street, a young man in a hoodie, heading toward the downtown core. There was nothing unusual about the ride. The passenger was quiet. He paid in cash. He got out near an alleyway off Church Street. But here's where things start to feel off. That was the last confirmed sighting of Imran. He never radioed dispatch afterward. His GPS signal, normally tracked by the company, stopped transmitting shortly after that drop-off. In a city wired with surveillance, the silence was chilling. Around 12:10 a.m., just 40 minutes later, another cab driver spotted something odd while passing through the same area. Imran's taxi was sitting at the curb. The engine was running, headlights cutting through the dark, and the hazard lights blinking faintly. The driver slowed down, thinking maybe Imran had pulled over to rest. But when police arrived minutes later, the scene told a different story. The driver's door was left slightly ajar. The key was still in the ignition. Imran's wallet and phone were missing, but there was no blood, no signs of a struggle. It was as if the man had simply stepped out of his cab and dissolved into thin air. Detectives began piecing together possibilities. The most obvious: robbery. Taxi drivers were often easy targets. Cash on hand, no protection, late-night hours. But something didn't fit. If this was just a robbery, why leave the cab running? Why not take the car too? Others whispered about something darker. Had the last passenger lured him into a trap? Was it gang-related? Or had Imran, a man with no history of trouble, staged his own disappearance? Police canvassed the area for security footage. Shockingly, in a neighborhood dotted with cameras, there was nothing. Either the passenger had known where the blind spots were, or there was something about this disappearance the cameras weren't meant to catch. By morning, the story was everywhere. Toronto taxi driver missing ran across TV screens. Fellow drivers staged small vigils outside Union Station, headlights glowing in solidarity. Imran's family begged for answers, his children clutching photos of their father at press conferences. Locals began trading theories in cafes and corner stores. Some swore they saw a man matching Imran's description, walking quickly down Bay Street that night, alone. Others insisted this wasn't the first time a taxi driver had gone missing downtown. Though police denied any connection, but as the days turned into weeks, with no ransom note, no body, and no evidence, the case began to feel less like a simple crime, and more like a ghost story haunting the streets of Toronto. The moment Imran's taxi was discovered, running empty, Toronto police treated it as a potential abduction. Officers swept the alley, combed nearby dumpsters, and even checked rooftops for any trace of the missing driver. But by dawn, nothing surfaced. Not a jacket, not a shoe, not a single personal belonging that could suggest where he had gone. The absence of evidence was its own clue. In most disappearances, there are fragments, a dropped phone, signs of a scuffle, footprints in the dirt. Here, there was only silence. By morning, the case was assigned to the homicide unit, though no body had been found. It doesn't feel like he just walked away. One detective admitted to local media. Something happened in that cab. The last confirmed passenger quickly became the focus. Witnesses recalled seeing a man in a dark hoodie near the cab that night, slipping out and vanishing into the crowd. Police described him as mid-20s, average build. It's possibly local, but beyond that vague description, they had nothing. No cameras had captured his face. No one came forward to identify him. Taxi dispatch records confirmed the cash fare, meaning there was no credit card trail. Was he the key to the mystery? Or just another anonymous rider in a city of millions? While investigators chased shadows, Imran's family was left in torment. His wife Nadia stood before cameras with a trembling voice. He wouldn't leave us. Not like this. Someone knows what happened to him. Neighbors described him as a devoted father, as a kind who worked double shifts just to save for his kids' education. Friends recalled how he always called home during breaks. That night, however, there was no call. No goodbye. The family received no ransom demand, no cryptic messages. Just silence, a silence heavier than any words. Imran's disappearance shook Toronto's taxi network. Drivers were used to danger, robberies, assaults, drunk passengers, but this was different. An entire man had vanished, leaving behind a running vehicle. Drivers began organizing patrols, checking in with each other on the radio more often. Some refused to take fares to certain neighborhoods after midnight. Others started carrying makeshift weapons for protection. The taxi union put pressure on police, demanding stronger action and quicker answers. If it can happen to him, it can happen to any of us, one driver warned at a rally. Behind closed doors, investigators considered three main theories. Robbery gone wrong. Perhaps the hoodie passenger attempted to rob Imran, panicked, and forced him away from the cab. But again, no money, no valuables were found. And if it was a robbery, why leave behind the biggest prize? The car itself? Voluntary disappearance. Maybe Imran staged the vanishing himself. People do it. They walk away from debts, marriages, lives they can't handle anymore. But detectives found no evidence of financial stress or secret troubles. His bank accounts were untouched, his passport at home. His life was stable, ordinary, rooted, targeted attack, the most chilling theory. Someone wanted him gone. Maybe he witnessed something he shouldn't have during his late-night routes. Maybe he unknowingly picked up the wrong passenger. Or maybe, just maybe, his disappearance was part of something bigger. Something that extended beyond one man and one cab. Over the following weeks, police followed dozens of tips. A man matching Imran's description was reportedly seen boarding a bus to Montreal. Another caller claimed he spotted Imran in a cafe near Scarborough. Each lead raised hope, but every time the person turned out to be someone else. Then there were the darker rumors. Some whispered about organized crime, suggesting Imran had become collateral damage in a feud he knew nothing about. Others claimed it was connected to human trafficking. A terrifying possibility that detectives never confirmed nor denied. One detail kept investigators awake at night. The 30 to 40 minutes between Imran's last fare and the discovery of his taxi. Where was he in that window? The GPS tracker on his cab had stopped transmitting after the last drop-off, either disabled or malfunctioning. It was as if someone had deliberately erased his trail. But why only for that short period? That missing half hour became the most scrutinized timeline of the case. Detectives retraced his possible routes, interviewed potential witnesses, and even reviewed subway logs for any sign of a man suddenly leaving a cab behind to vanish into the underground. Tunnels of the city, no answers. Just questions. By the end of the second month, the official investigation had stalled. Police maintained they were pursuing active leads, but behind the scenes, frustration grew. Without evidence, without suspects, and without a body, her case was drifting toward cold. But for Toronto's citizens, the story refused to fade. Newspapers ran anniversary pieces, radio shows debated theories, and online forums dissected every detail of the disappearance. Too many, the idea that a man could vanish in the heart of Canada's largest city without a trace felt less like a crime and more like a curse. As official leads dried up, the streets of Toronto began telling their own stories. At first, it was whispers among taxi drivers, tales of other strange fares, suspicious passengers, or vehicles tailing them late at night. Soon, those whispers spilled into local cafes, community centers, and eventually online forums. One of the most repeated rumors was that Imran had picked up the wrong passenger, someone connected to organized crime. Perhaps he overheard a conversation he wasn't supposed to, or maybe his cab was used to move something illegal. "Cabbies see everything," one Toronto driver said. Sometimes too much. Others painted a far darker picture, that Imran's disappearance was linked to human trafficking or underground gangs that prowled the city. These weren't the kind of rumors police like to acknowledge, but for many, it was easier to believe in crime than in thin air swallowing a man whole. 3 weeks after the disappearance, a man came forward claiming he saw something unusual near the alley where Imran's taxi was found. According to him, around midnight, he noticed 2 men arguing beside a cab. One of them fit Imran's description. The other, a tall man in a long coat, face hidden. The witness said the argument escalated until Imran was shoved toward a black SUV idling nearby. Moments later, both the SUV and the men were gone. But here's the twist. When police pressed the man for details, his story kept shifting. Sometimes the SUV was gray. Sometimes it was a van. At one point, he admitted he'd been drinking heavily that night. Was he telling the truth or chasing attention? Detectives couldn't be sure. But his words added fuel to the city's growing paranoia. Locals, who passed by the alley where the cab was found, often described it with one word: wrong. Not just because of the case, because of the atmosphere. Shop owners said deliveries late at night felt eerie there, as if someone was watching. A group of students swore they saw strange lights flickering above the alley weeks after the disappearance. Even though the city confirmed no electrical faults, one older resident told reporters, "It's like that alley doesn't want you there. First the cab, then the whispers. People cross the street now just to avoid it." What was once just another stretch of concrete had become a place of superstition, as though the ground itself remembered what happened that night. With no answers from police, imagination filled the void. Online forums buzzed with theories ranging from the rational to the bizarre. Witness protection gone wrong, some believed. Imran had been secretly working with law enforcement and was pulled into protection suddenly, leaving his family behind. But if that were true, why not warn them? Why not leave a trace? Serial predator? A darker idea suggested he wasn't the first victim, just the first to get attention. Other missing persons cases were suddenly being connected, though police denied any link. The paranormal angle, as stories grew wilder, some claimed the disappearance was supernatural. A vanishing man, as one forum called it, tied to Toronto's haunted history. Tales of people swallowed by fog, of ghosts in alleyways, were shared with alarming conviction. What made these theories so gripping is that none could be entirely disproven, despite weeks of searching. The man in the hoodie remained unidentified. No missing person matched his description. No tips pointed to him. It was as if he, too, had vanished from Toronto that night. Some speculated he was just an ordinary fare, the last innocent thread in Imran's routine. Others insisted he was the orchestrator, a decoy who lured the driver into a trap. A few even suggested he wasn't real at all, but a mistake in witness memory. The taxi union offered a cash reward for any information on the passenger, but no one stepped forward. His silence echoed louder than words. In a desperate move, Imran's family sought help outside traditional means. A local psychic claimed she could sense his presence. She described visions of water, of a dark tunnel, of Imran calling out, but unable to be heard. Police, of course, dismissed her claims. But the detail about tunnels struck a chord online. Toronto is home to Path, a massive underground walkway system connecting parts of downtown. Could Imran have been taken through those tunnels? Could that explain why cameras above ground saw nothing? It was a theory that gained surprising traction, even though there was no proof. While theories multiplied, the human cost was devastating. Imran's wife struggled to keep the household together, juggling grief and finances. His children, too young to understand, began asking when their father would return. Their questions, family members said, were the hardest to bear. Taxi drivers, organized fundraisers, raising money for the family, but money couldn't replace answers. "It's like he's out there somewhere," Nadia whispered during a vigil. But the city swallowed him whole. Her words stuck with people. Could a city really hide a man that completely? For months, the disappearance of Imran Sayla had felt like a dead end. No witnesses, no suspects, no body. The city was moving on, but the family refused to give up. And then, almost 6 months later, the case roared back to life. Detectives announced they had uncovered new CCTV footage from a private building near the alley. The footage was grainy, taken from an old security camera that no one had initially thought to check. What it showed wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough to reignite the mystery. The video, time-stamped just minutes after Imran's cab was found, captured a lone figure walking briskly down the street. The person was tall, wearing a long coat, and appeared to be carrying something slung over the shoulder, possibly a bag, or something heavier. Though the image was blurred, many speculated it could have been Imran himself, or the mysterious man seen arguing near the cab. The troubling detail? The figure appeared to be walking away from the alley toward the path entrances. Toronto's underground system, this tied directly to the psychic's vision and the online theory about the tunnels. Suddenly, the supernatural talk seemed less far-fetched and more like a mislead. Around the same time, construction workers renovating an old storefront 3 blocks from where the cab was found made a chilling discovery. Hidden behind a loose panel in the basement wall was a wallet. Imran's wallet. Inside were his ID, credit cards, and a small amount of cash. The strange part? The items were clean, not dusty or damaged, as though they had been placed there recently. Why hide a wallet in a wall? Was someone trying to throw investigators off? Or was it a message meant to be found? The re-emergence of evidence pulled the hoodie passenger theory back into focus. Some online sleuths suggested the figure in the CCTV was the passenger, carrying Imran's body or belongings. Others believed the wallet discovery proved that the passenger had lured him somewhere. Still, skeptics argued it could all be coincidence. Maybe Imran lost his wallet earlier. Maybe the CCTV figure was just a random pedestrian. But deep down, the public wasn't buying coincidence anymore. The timing was too perfect. With new developments, police faced mounting pressure to solve the case. Critics accused them of negligence. Why hadn't the CCTV footage been checked earlier? Why hadn't the path system been fully searched? In response, law enforcement organized one of the largest underground searches in Toronto history. Teams combed through tunnels, service routes, and maintenance areas, hoping to find any clue. They found nothing. Not a shoe, not a jacket, not even fingerprints tied to Imran. For the public, it felt like the city itself was hiding something. The footage and wallet discovery breathed life into the underground theory. Online sleuths mapped out potential routes through the path that Imran or his abductor could have taken. Some even suggested secret entrances, hidden passageways, long forgotten, that criminals might use to vanish. One chilling possibility gained traction. What if Imran had been forced underground and never allowed to resurface? It was a terrifying thought, but one that matched the evidence too well to ignore. Then came an even darker twist. As journalists revisited old cases, they found eerie similarities. In 2007, another taxi driver in Toronto had gone missing for 2 days before being found disoriented miles away, claiming he remembered nothing. In 2009, a rideshare driver vanished for several hours and later said he'd been chased through the tunnels but couldn't explain by whom. Suddenly, Ron's case didn't look isolated. It looked like part of a disturbing pattern: drivers disappearing, reappearing, or never being found at all, with someone preying specifically on those who worked the night shift. For Imran's family, the new evidence was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it reignited hope that he might still be alive. On the other, it deepened the pain, proof he had been out there, moving through the city, and yet still unreachable. Nadia described it perfectly. It's like the city is holding him hostage. We know he was there, but we can't reach him. Her words echoed the feeling of thousands who followed the case. Just When the story seemed to plateau again, a shocking report surfaced. According to Nadia, she received a late-night phone call from an unknown number. When she answered, there was silence, followed by faint breathing. Then, in a voice she swore was her husband's, a single word: help. The line went dead before police could trace it. Some dismissed it as a cruel prank, others as a grieving woman's misinterpretation. But Nadia was adamant. It was him. If true, it meant Imran was still alive. If false, it meant someone out there was deliberately tormenting his family. The year 2011 may feel distant now, but for those connected to the case of Toronto's vanishing taxi driver, time has not dulled the wound. A decade later, his disappearance remains a cold scar on the city's memory. Families moved on, drivers kept working, and the streets continued to bustle, but the questions never faded. And in the silence left behind, legends began to grow. Police investigations eventually slowed. With no physical evidence beyond the abandoned cab, leads dried up. Still, three main theories continued to dominate conversations in cafes, taxi stands, and online forums. The crime of opportunity. Many believed the driver had been lured by a seemingly harmless passenger who turned violent. Robbery gone wrong, kidnapping, or perhaps targeted revenge. But skeptics asked, if it was robbery, why leave behind his wallet, watch, and cab? The voluntary disappearance, some argued, the driver orchestrated his own vanishing. Maybe debt, secret troubles, or the need to escape. But for those who knew him, this made no sense. He had a family he adored, no evidence of financial ruin, and had shown no signs of wanting to leave. The urban cover-up. The most chilling theory was that something bigger was at play: human trafficking rings, organized crime, or even corrupt officials. In a city filled with cameras, how could a man vanish without a trace unless someone powerful ensured it? Each theory sparked heated debate, but none ever produced proof for the driver's family. Each passing year was a cruel cycle of hope and heartbreak. His wife often spoke to the media, saying she refused to believe he was dead without evidence. His children, once too young to fully understand, grew up in the shadow of unanswered questions. Birthdays, holidays, and anniversaries carried a ghostly emptiness. His chair at the table remained unfilled, his favorite jacket still hanging by the door. For them, closure was a word without meaning. Toronto's taxi drivers never forgot. His case became more than just one man's story. It was a symbol of their vulnerability. Drivers began demanding more protections, better surveillance, GPS systems, and stricter safety measures for late-night shifts. In meetings and vigils, they spoke his name. For them, his disappearance was a reminder that behind every cab on the street was a human life. Fragile and often overlooked. As years passed, the case slipped from front-page headlines to whispered urban legend. Newer generations of Toronto residents heard the story like a ghost tale. The driver who vanished, leaving only his cab behind. Some swore they had seen him walking near Lake Ontario, riding the subway late at night, or sitting silently in another taxi. Of course, none of these sightings were ever confirmed. But the myths made the case live on. For many, the unanswered questions gave the story a supernatural edge. Did he stumble into something he wasn't supposed to see? Did he cross paths with forces beyond human understanding? Or was it simply the most tragic, unsolved crime hidden in plain sight? What makes this case so haunting is its simplicity. There was no dramatic chase, no bloody crime scene, no obvious trail. Just a cab with the engine running, headlights on, and silence. That silence is what still grips Toronto to this day. The driver became a symbol of all the mysteries that cities hide beneath their neon lights and crowded streets. His absence is a reminder that in a world full of cameras, police, and technology, a person can still disappear into thin air. Today, his case is still technically open. Every few years, an anniversary sparks renewed interest, and police issue brief statements. But the reality is, without new evidence, the mystery is frozen in time. For the family, it's a wound that never healed. For taxi drivers, it's a warning. For the city, it's a story that refuses to fade. And for us, it's a haunting reminder. Sometimes the scariest mysteries are not the ones with monsters or ghosts, but the ones where ordinary people vanish in ordinary places. Without a single trace, the vanishing taxi driver of Toronto remains one of the city's darkest unsolved mysteries. Was it crime, conspiracy, or something else entirely? Maybe one day we'll know. But until then, it remains a story written in silence. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and press the bell icon. Because the streets are full of secrets, and we're here to uncover them.